Well, good morning, afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Hay with NASPO Value Point, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is on kind of an exciting and challenging arena for a lot of states these days. It's exciting that we now have a service available to help those states who suffer a data breach or a credit monitoring issue, but it's also challenging when states do have that. Valerie Bollinger, who is our lead for this contract from the state of Idaho, will be walking us through the new contracts that we have available for data breach and credit monitoring services. She's put together a wonderful presentation, and we'll have her start here in just a couple of minutes. Before we start, though, just a quick couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's meeting, and so this webinar will be available later on the NASPO Value Point website. And we'll also put the slide deck that you see today up on the NASPO Value Point website as well. The second item is if you have to leave your phone for any reason, if you could please mute your phone rather than putting your phone on hold, that would be wonderful. Or if you're going to be in a noisy area, if you could please mute your phones just to keep the noise down. A lot of state systems have that wonderful hold music, which is great if you're waiting on hold, but it's kind of distracting for a webinar. So if you could please remember to do that, that would be great. With that, I'll turn the presentation now over to Valerie to walk us through data breach and credit monitoring services. So Valerie, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. And thank you, everybody, for making some time today to join us for the webinar. As Tim said, we're excited to be rolling this one out. So hold on just a second. There we go. Okay. So before I talk about anything else, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my awesome sourcing team. So joining Idaho as the lead state, we had Janet Del Greco Olson from Connecticut, Tim Jenks from Oregon, Julie Matthews from California, Doug Felix from Washington, and then of course Tim Hay as our NASPO Value Point coordinator. So I just want to really thank them for their hard work and time, so they were really awesome. With that, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the purpose, the reason that we got into this project. So we keep joking that this is the contract that no one wants to need or use, because obviously using this contract, something bad happened. But the idea is that in the event that you have a breach where sensitive data is compromised, the participating entity can immediately initiate services with one of these contractors. So the benefit is that there's no need for an emergency procurement, which I know a lot of states have had to do, states or agencies or other entities have had to do. And hopefully you already have a relationship with the contractor to be able to jump right in if you do have something happen. So talk a little bit about the scope of services. So there's three main areas of services under this contract, in addition to some sort of general preparation. Participating entities may choose to use some or all of the services. So we'll talk about that a little bit as I talk about each one. So the first thing isn't one of the main areas of service, but it is kind of a preparation that you can do with the contractor, and that is a sample notification plan. So, and this language is more or less taken right from the RFP. So upon execution of a participating addendum, the contractor must work with each participating entity to develop a sample notification plan and template based on each entity's requirements in order to facilitate a timely notification in the event of a breach. So the idea here is that as soon as you have a participating addendum in place, you can go kind of work out a plan, a strategy, a template, so that if you do have a breach, you don't have to start from square one. You can go take your template, add whatever information, tweak it however you need to, and you're off and running. So now the actual core areas of service under the contract. The first is notifications. So most states or other jurisdictions are going to have some kind of legal requirement about notifying people if their information is breached. So At the state or at the entity's option, the contractor can assist in drafting notifications. If you want to just draft it on your own, that's completely fine. It's just there as a resource. And then the printing and mailing of notifications. So, if you have a breach of one, and by breach I really mean if something sensitive gets sent to the wrong address or something along those lines, a single notification is pretty easy for the state or whatever entity to do. But if we're talking about a breach of 1 million, that capacity is a lot harder. So that's where this part of the service comes in. The next thing is call center services. So if there's a breach and you activate services with a contractor, there will be a dedicated phone number. It's staffed 24/7. And the participating entity can provide a frequently asked question script so that, all of the people calling into the call center are getting consistent information because you've provided the information to the contractor. And then the last thing is really, the core idea that we started out with, which is the credit monitoring services. And this really includes more than just credit monitoring, kind of an umbrella. So the participating entity may choose a 1 bureau or 3 bureau option for the credit monitoring itself. It also includes other identity theft protection. So there are things to look for as far as suspicious activity that might mean that an identity is being stolen and that aren't on a credit report. So that's a little bit different than credit monitoring. If an identity is stolen from, someone signs up for the free credit monitoring and then their identity is stolen, the contractor will help assist them to get that all corrected. And there is a $1 million identity theft insurance coverage there, so the contractor will spend up to $1 million to help fix that identity theft situation. So those are the core services under these contracts. To give you a little background on the RFP process. The RFP was released on October 21st of 2015. We held a pre-proposal conference on October 29th, which was attended by teleconference by a number of potential vendors. We amended the RFP 3 times, and it closed on December 8th, 2015. We received 4 proposals. We did find 2 of them non-responsive, which I'll mention again in a few slides. We ultimately awarded 2 master agreements, and the contract term on those is February 23rd of 2016 through the February 22nd of 2018, with a total life not to exceed 5 years. So what you can see now on your screen is the evaluation criteria. These are the general categories that we evaluated, and this is the information that was included in the RFP. So this is the information that was given to the vendors. Mandatory submission requirements, that was pass-fail. Business information was worth 100 points. Organization and staffing, 150 points. Scope of work was 350 points. And then cost proposal, 400 points. So I'm going to go through a little bit more detail just so you can see what we were really looking at and what the sourcing team evaluated as far as information that we were asking for. So under business information, we asked for a business profile, which was general business information, structure, growth rate, that sort of thing, and we required a 5 year minimum for experience. So if you didn't have 5 years, you're not eligible for award. We also asked about experience specifically with statewide or large consortium contracts like a NASPO Valley Point Master Agreement. And we asked for some details of size and scope of breach experience. So just because they had a contract doesn't mean they actually handled a large-scale breach. So we wanted to know, what kind of situations have they actually worked with. And then finally, we asked for references, and the format for that was that we included a reference questionnaire that they could send to their references that were then completed and returned back to me. And we requested 3. I don't think we got all 3 for any of the proposers, but we did get at least some references to be able to check their past performance. Under the heading of organization and staffing, we asked for some specific information about a contract manager, and that's the single point of contact for the NASPO Value Point master agreements. And again, there we required 5 years of experience. We also asked about the breach response specialist. So that would be, who do you call? Who do you as a participating entity call if you have a breach? And that may be the same person as the contractor, contract manager. It may not, so that's why we asked about that. We wanted to know about the qualifications and training requirements for call center customer service representatives as well as identity restoration personnel. And then we asked a somewhat open question, what other roles, who are the other key positions or personnel involved? So that gave the vendors an opportunity to kind of fill out the picture for us. And then some detailed information about the scope of work. So this was really the meat. It was, the most points available for the technical proposal and really got to the heart of what we were asking for as far as services. So we did ask that offers identify if they plan to use subcontractors, and if so, to talk about the qualifications of the proposed subcontractors. So we did evaluate the qualifications of proposed subs. We asked about how the offer would work with participating entities, how how they would work to send out notifications in the event of a breach, including, again, their experience with large breaches, their capacity to meet varying legal requirements, excuse me, and we also asked for a sample notification. We asked for information about the process of enrolling individuals. We asked about the methods used for credit and identity theft monitoring. We asked for information about the alerts and notifications. So if something just shows up on your credit report, how are you alerted to that as an active participant? Is it a text message? Is it an email? How much information is included? That sort of thing. We asked for details about the identity theft insurance, and we got copies of those policies. Asked about the identity restoration services, and then, customer service. How are they going to guarantee us excellent customer service for us, but especially for, our citizens who are signing up for these services? Available language options. The only requirement in the RFP was that the customer service folks be able to communicate clearly in English, but we wanted to know if there were other options available, if they had, if they could staff the call center, for example, with people who speak Spanish or other languages. And then finally, security of information. Obviously, the concern here is to avoid a secondary breach. So, our citizens are going to give information to the contractors, and we want to make sure that they're going to be protecting that information appropriately. So that was the technical proposal. The cost proposal, what we asked for was tiered unit pricing for 4 categories of services. And it's 4 this time instead of 3. I said there were 3 core services, but we priced the single bureau credit monitoring and the triple bureau credit monitoring separately. And then for evaluation purposes, we averaged those unit prices so that we didn't have to worry too much about the tiered pricing being weighted in a way that would kind of hurt us in the end. So the 400 cost proposal points were split evenly among these 4 categories. So 100 points for notifications, call center, single bureau, and triple bureau credit monitoring. So just a note on notifications, we asked for cost per notification, and that's based on a single duplex page, a number 10 envelope, and first class postage. So if you had a breach and you needed something different than that. So for example, if you needed a multi-page notification or you wanted a different kind of envelope or whatever the circumstances, that pricing you would work out with the contractor, kind of using the base pricing in the contract as a guide or as a starting point. Evaluations were then, the scoring was then normalized according to the process explained in the RFP document. But basically, the top score for the technical proposal received all available technical points, which would be 600 points. And then the other proposals received technical points in proportion to their score. Same with cost, but it was lowest average unit price received all the cost points by category, and then the other proposals received cost points in proportion again. So this is a breakdown. As I mentioned before, we did have 2 proposals that were found non-responsive, so only the 2 remaining proposals were fully evaluated. I won't read through all the numbers for you, but just point out that CS Identity received the top points in technical, as well as 3 of the 4 cost categories. ID Experts received top points in the call center category for cost. And the end result was that CS Identity received 910.5 points. ID Experts received 731.8 points. So master agreements were awarded to both responsive offers. And the reason that we did that was to make sure that we have sufficient capacity to respond if there happen to be multiple breaches at one time. So for example, if California has a breach and Idaho has a breach at the same time, we didn't want there to be an issue where the contractor was not able to handle both, or they handled both, but the quality of the services was somewhat diminished because of the capacity. So we thought it was important to have multiple contractors available. Just sort of a comparison here so that you understand how this is set up. So both of the contractors identified subs in their proposals, but kind of in a flip-flop sort of way. So CSID uses subcontractors for notifications and for their call center services. They identified a specific subcontractor, Rust Consulting, and their qualifications were included. So that sub was evaluated through the RFP process. On the flip side, or sort of on the flip side, halfway, ID Experts provides notification and call center services directly, but they also have subcontractors that they work with. So depending on the details of the breach, the circumstances, other breaches that they have going on, they have subcontractors available. And they also identified a specific subcontractor, Epic, who was evaluated through the RFP process as well. And then if you look at the bottom, credit monitoring, CSID provides credit monitoring directly. And when I say credit monitoring, I mean credit monitoring and the other associated services, so the identity theft protection, the insurance, that sort of thing. But if you look, ID Experts also utilizes CSID for the credit monitoring. So they identified CSID as a subcontractor. And what we learned through the process of reading proposals is that CSID actually provides the majority of credit monitoring services in the country. So it was not actually, we learned, surprising that other offers would be using CSID as a subcontractor for that particular service, because there really aren't a lot of providers out there for that credit monitoring space. So just to look at pricing information, on the NASPA Value Point website, you can see the full cost proposals for both of the contractors, but you're looking at CSID for all 4 categories, and then ID Experts for all 4 categories. So I wanted you to be able to compare them a little more easily here. So this is for notifications. The tiered pricing, you you can see is we tried to break it down, going from, you know, a very small breach to a very large, and, you know, breach size can get astronomically large, so we wanted to kind of you know, address that. So these prices are, the tiers are based on the number of eligible persons. So that means how many people are affected by the breach, how many records were breached, that kind of thing. The breakdown is the same for the call center. The tiers are based on the number of eligible persons. Now, you may notice there's a fairly drastic difference in the unit price between the two contractors. Hold off on having a heart attack over that just for the moment, because I'm going to show a sample kind of scenario in a minute that might show how this would work out. Now, the pricing information for credit monitoring, the tiers you'll notice are different. And that is because research has shown that a very small percentage of people actually enroll for these services when they're offered. And that may be due to the fact that people just aren't too worried about it, and it may be because they're already getting credit monitoring because their stuff was breached by somebody else, and they've already got this free service, so they don't need to sign up again. So we looked at it based on you know, the smaller percentage of people signing up. And that's the same for both the single bureau and the triple bureau credit monitoring. So I put together a sample breach scenario, and I want to preface this with a fun fact. So when I was attending law school, law professors love to use made-up state names in their exams because they don't want anyone to get caught up in a particular state's actual laws because it's just a theoretical scenario. So for whatever reason, my professors always used the made-up state of Pennsylvania. So that's what you're getting today is Pennsylvania. So the state of Pennsylvania's Department of Tax has a breach of its online tax submission system, compromising the personally identifiable information, that's PII, of 1.5 million citizens. Pennsylvania must send written notifications and has decided to offer free triple bureau credit monitoring to all affected individuals. So for the purpose of this sample, we're going to assume that 10% of eligible persons call the call center and that 8% actually enroll in credit monitoring. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly what these numbers would be, but 8 to 10% is what we've sort of learned to be a pretty typical number. So based on that information, this is how the cost would work out. So your notifications are, the quantity is going to be that full breach number, 1.5 million. Call center, 10% of that, and then credit monitoring, 8%. And then you've got your unit prices that hopefully, if I didn't mess up, match up with what I showed you on the previous slides. And then you end up with your extended price. And despite the fact that your unit price for call center is $12 a call for CSID and only 50 cents per call with ID experts, your total dollar amount, it really is not, considering the scale, is really not very far apart. And that's, as you can see, because of the credit monitoring pricing, there's a pretty big difference there. So it looks a little bit shocking. We as a sourcing team were a little bit shocked when we first looked at the pricing, and we were really concerned. But it looks to be just, you know, essentially business decisions on how to sort of load their pricing. But the actual cost to the participating entity doesn't look a whole lot different in the end. So how do you get started if you want to use one of these contracts? The first thing would be to sign a participating addendum. Tim's going to talk about that process in just a minute, so I'll leave that to him. Next, you want to develop that sample notification plan that I talked about earlier with the contractor. Have something in place so that if you do have a breach, all you have to do is pick up the phone. And then, if a breach occurs, I would suggest that you reach out to if you have a participating addendum with each contractor, reach out to both to discuss the specifics. What's their capacity right now, and what is the pricing really going to look like? I've only had this conversation with one of the two contractors, but I know that, obviously the pricing in the contract is they can't charge you any more than that, assuming that the parameters are the same for the notifications. They can't charge you more than that, but they may be able to charge you less depending on the specifics. So do make sure to look into that if you have time to look into that, because it may make a difference. And then, activate the services, and you're off and running, and hopefully it runs very smoothly. So that is my presentation. If you have any questions about the master agreements, the terms of the contract, that sort of thing, please feel free to reach out to me. My phone number and my email are here. They're also on the NASPO Value Point website, and they're also on the State of Idaho purchasing website. So I'm fairly easy to track down. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk about the participating addendum process.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Great presentation. So we are going to talk about the NASPO Value Point participating addendum process this morning. As you know, all states have signed what we call a Memorandum of Agreement that allows the District of Columbia in all 50 states and the recognized U.S. territories to utilize any of our cooperative agreements that we have in place. So we have approximately 53, 54 agreements right now, along with this brand new one for credit monitoring services. And in that Memorandum of Agreement, it spells out how the participating addendum process works. And there's 3 levels of participation. Option 1 is the one that we like the best, and that's where a state will sign a participating addenda that allows the entire state, as well as all the political subdivisions within that state, to utilize the services under that PA. Well, there are sometimes some situations where a state may not be able to execute a participating addendum for themselves, but they don't have any problems if a political subdivision wants to utilize these services. So in that scenario, we would encourage option number 2, where a state would participating addenda for all the political subdivisions and non-state entity use within that state. And if that isn't going to work for that state, and a political subdivision is still interested in utilizing the agreement, then we still have options available for them. But what we have to do is first check in with the state CPO to ensure that they don't have any objections to that. So this question comes up a lot. I'll just use California as an example. Say the County of Los Angeles wants to execute a participating addenda, and California themselves has not signed a participating addenda with that state. They always question, well, the state of California has no jurisdiction over what the County of Los Angeles does. And that may really be the case in state statute. However, we recognize that a lot of states have their own in-state cooperative purchasing programs. And if California has their own in-state cooperative program for credit monitoring services and data breach services, we're not going to go in and compete against that service. We recognize that each state has their own funding mechanisms through admin fees, and they may want to try to drive spend through that cooperative contract within their state. So that's the main reason why we have that check-in process. But what we'll do is we'll contact this chief procurement officer within that state to make sure that they don't have any objections, and provided that they don't, then we'll allow the political subdivision to execute the participating addendum on their own. 99 times out of 100, typically the chief procurement officer doesn't have any objections. So the step-by-step process for executing the participating addendums are similar for both Opportunity 1 and 2. A state will negotiate directly with the contractor in executing those participating addendums. And I'll show you here in a minute where those sample PAs are located. NASPO Value Point nor Valerie will get involved in your negotiations, or we do not need to approve your executed participating addenda. We're here to answer any questions, though. So if you have any questions on the participating addenda process itself, you can direct those questions to either myself or one of our education and outreach personnel. Or if it's a master agreement question, if you have a question about a specific term and condition in that master agreement, Valerie is the person that you'll want to talk to. So you'll work directly with the contractor in executing those participating addenda. Once you have those participating addendas executed and signatures by both the state as well as the contractor have been completed, you'll just convert that into a PDF and you'll just send that to NASPA Value Point. And the email address to send it to is pa@naspovaluepoint.org. What we'll do then is we'll log that participating addenda in, and then we'll get it published up on the website. So the steps for opportunity 1 and 2 are very same. In fact, they're exactly the same. The number 3 opportunity is where a political subdivision wants to participate in a state that has not executed the participating addenda. So what happens there is you'll contact us, either the political subdivision will contact us or the contractor may contact us and saying, hey, we have a county that's interested in this state for executing a PA. Can you please help us facilitate the process? Then one of our education and outreach personnel will reach out to the chief procurement officer in that state to make sure that they don't have any objections. And provided they come back with no objections, we'll log that and file that approval, so to speak, from the CPO, and then we'll green light the that county and that contractor to go ahead and execute their participating addenda. And then the process is the same once again. They'll just work directly with each other in getting the participating addenda executed, and then they'll send in that completed PA to the same email address at pa@naspovaluepoint.org, and then we'll log it and get it published up on the website. So here's a flow chart that kind of outlines how it all works. The templates are located on the NASPA Value Point website, and I'll show that here in just a second. And here's the flow for a state executing a PA, and then here's the flow for a political subdivision executing a PA. And as I said, we have that check-in process right here with the state CPO. So just a couple of things to remember before I jump out to the website is we do have sample PAs located on our NASPA Value Point website. Those are the starting documents. Each state is eligible to negotiate in additional terms and conditions that are applicable to their state. I know a lot of states fund their offices through administration fees, and you have every right to negotiate in those additional fees if you need to. That's only applicable within your state. Or if you have any other like unique reporting requirements or any other unique terms and conditions that are pertinent to your state, that is where you will negotiate in those T's and C's. And keep in mind these are negotiated in. You know, the contractors, they may choose to accept or not accept those additional T's and C's that you negotiate. So it's your typical contract negotiation process. We will keep a copy of all the NASPA Value Point executed participating addendums on our website and also in a repository. We have a central Dropbox that we have access to all of them. We will also update the map on our website as states execute their new participating addendums. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the lead state and NASPA Value Point do not get involved in any of your negotiations. We are here, though, to answer any questions you may have. We ask that you only submit those completed and negotiated PAs with signatures from both parties to us. Sometimes we're copied in on communications between contractors and states and their PA negotiations. We sometimes confuse that as maybe it's a negotiated PA. We really only want to see those completed PAs, so we're not publishing you know, partially completed PAs on the website. And we ask that you submit those PAs in a PDF format. I'm here to answer any questions that you have regarding the PA process or the NASPA Value Point program. And if I can't provide that question or answer to you, I will get you in contact with the appropriate person, either if it's Valerie or if it's one of our education and outreach personnel. So quickly, let's just jump out to the website and I will show you where you can find the sample PAs. So if you go out to our NASPA Value Point website and if you just do a search right here for credit, you'll see that the new contract is right here and the official title is Data Breach and Credit Monitoring Services. We have the expiration and inception dates located here. If you click on this link right here, it'll drill down to the portfolio information itself. So you have Valerie here as the point of contact with her email and phone number here. You have all the information related to the release of the RFP, all the addenda, the Q&A, and then also our award recommendations to the management board. They're all located right here on this portfolio page. If you click on the Contractors tab, this will pull up the two logos of the Contractors tab for CSID and ID Experts. Just click on either of the logos for which contractor you're interested in. And we have the point of contact information here for the contractor, as well as the contract itself or the master agreement itself, along with their proposal and a redacted proposal as well. So their cost information and their redacted proposal. The model participating addenda is located right here. So you just click on that and it'll pull up a Word document for you to begin your negotiations with. So with that, I would like to open it up to any questions that folks may have of either Valerie or myself this afternoon. All right. Well, I'm hearing crickets, so I'm assuming that we've covered the... Oh, did I hear somebody?
I do have a question. Is this slideshow presentation going to be posted on the website?
Yes, we are recording today's webinar, so we'll have that recording on the website as well as the slide deck. And that'll all be posted up on the main portfolio page. So this page right here, actually go back one more tab. So it'll be listed right here under Documents. You'll see the slideshow here. And depending upon how we post the recording, it'll be either posted here under Documents or it might be here under Special Instructions. But that information will be made available.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had a question. Could you confirm for me what the expiration date is of the current term? I've seen a couple different dates on the slides and on the NASPO Valley Point site. So for CS Identity,
Valerie, could you confirm that? Yeah, and if we have an incorrect date, we'll get it corrected. But Valerie, could you confirm those dates?
Yeah, they should both be the same, and it's February 22nd of 2018 is when they expire.
Okay.
I
think we have it. Yeah, I think we have an incorrect date on our website, and we'll get that corrected right away.
Yeah, and also on one of the slides on the slide deck. That's why I asked the question. So,
yep.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Well, I just want to. Oh yes.
I'm sorry, Tim. This is Elizabeth Lenhart from Pennsylvania. What were the renewals? The initial period goes to 2022 of 2018.
Correct.
Yeah, so it'll be a 2-year initial term and then optional 1-year renewals with a total potential of 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Breach, credit monitoring, credit.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today for this webinar. As Valerie said, this is the one contract we hope to see 0 sales on, but unfortunately, we've already had a couple of states that have had a need to utilize the services already. So it's just, it's a tough world we live in now, and I'm glad that we now have these services in place to help those states out in case they have the misfortune of suffering a data breach in their state. So once again, thank you all for participating on today's webinar. I hope you found this information valuable. And if you have any feedback on what you've seen today or any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to either Valerie or myself. And I just want to wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.